How many handicapping groups can say they were around before Twitter, MySpace, AOL, Sunday morning cable infomercials, beepers, and 1-800 numbers? Founded in 1957, the Gold Sheet is the country's longest-running sports betting newsletter and has served bettors for over 6 decades. So between 1957 and now, if you have not checked out the Gold Sheet, here's your chance for only $1 per day. Head to goldsheet.com and just go to buy now or click the special box on the main page to get both the NBA Gold Sheet and college basketball Gold Sheet newsletter for only $7. For just $1 per day, you will receive projected scores, spread and totals, power ratings and strength of schedule, teams straight up, against the spread, and over-under records and their season average line for both sides and total. Plus, tons more handicapper information to help you bet with confidence, and of course, tons of picks. This offer is for a limited time only, so act fast and head to goldsheet.com and try it out for 7 days for only $7. You'll be glad you did.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. Friday starts the weekend, and we are here to make your weekend a profitable one through the props betting market. I am Andy Lang from WagerTalk.com. Joining me, as always, my fellow prop masters, Matt Josephs from SportsMemo.com and Andrew McGinnis from WagerTalk.com. We got a lot to go over. We're going to go over some NFL games. We're going to talk a little bit of college football, what to do in the last couple weeks. We'll go over some UFC and some NHL. And then, of course, we are giving out our best bet prop of the week at the end of the show. Gentlemen, we got a lot going on. Matt, you have a 5% college football play that is up this weekend. Correct me if is this your first one this year?
Yeah, first one this year. Still atop the leaderboard, most profitable this season, hitting over 60% of my college football plays. And yeah, I decided there was something that I really liked. It's a team total that I really like, and we've played a lot of those this year. So yeah, first 5-unit play up on sportsmemo.com for the college football season.
Yeah, go grab that. Nobody better in college football, and Matt is very selective with his big play. So when he has one, you know what to do. Fire away. Andrew, CFL Grey Cup, end of Canadian football season. So I know it's been a good one for you. I enjoyed it. This was the first year that I actually paid attention to it. I thought it was great. I thought it was bettable. I thought it was gettable. I love that you don't have to make a ton of bets each weekend to turn a profit. And here we come down to the Grey Cup. So tell us a little bit about the CFL season and what we got in store for this weekend.
Before I start, Andy, can you hear me? Just want to confirm if you can hear me right now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Look, one thing I love about the CFL, and you mentioned it, there's only 4 games a week. You know, imagine handicapping an entire slate. I just wish they would make props available widely for the CFL. It would be awesome. Like, the 3 of us would crush it because, 4 games. Think about how many games we break down every week for the NFL for props and try and narrow down our selections. Imagine with the CFL with just 4 games. But I can't wait. Winnipeg, the Blue Bombers are going for their 3-peat. They're going for their 3rd straight Grey Cup. Toronto, they ended up coming out of the East. So I do have a play up, not just on the side and total going up this evening. I just got to finish up the analysis on that before I post that. But looking forward to the Grey Cup. And unlike the NFL, Andy, the CFL doesn't waste any time. They get right after it the next week. There's no media weekend. They just go right after it the next week. So I'm looking forward to it. And there's only 1 game in the NHL today here on Friday. Tomorrow makes for a massive slate. The NHL schedule makers, I don't know what they're doing, man. Thursday is a 13-game slate. Friday is a 1-day. Saturday, that's a jam-packed slate. And, of course, I'll have some props up for Sunday. So looking forward to the weekend.
NBA did the same thing. They had 3 games last night, all late games. Made no sense. Made no sense whatsoever. All started at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So I've got a 5% NFL play up. We are hitting these consistently, 10-3 run this year. Also, I have to promote women's college basketball. It's our first year doing women's college basketball. We're 11-2 to start the season. It's been amazing. So we've got a women's college basketball pack that is up right now, but also that 5% NFL play is up right now on WagerTalk.com. All right, guys. Matt, I'm coming to you first. This is a game near and dear to you and me, the Eagles and the Colts. First off, give me just a little bit of thoughts on last night's Thursday night football game, and then jump right into Eagles and Colts.
Boy, what a bloodbath on the most obvious prop of all with regards to Derrick Henry's rushing over. I don't know what it started at. I don't know what it finished at. I think it was at like 98.5 at one point, but man.
Started at 98 and started at 98.5, closed around 102.5.
It's insane. I mean, I didn't take it because I for some reason never liked the obvious ones, guys. I took his carries. That was the only one I had last night that hit. Woods and Burks have been short yardage guys all season, so I take the under in their longest reception. Naturally, it goes over because they both have their longest receptions of the season. That's the wackiness of Thursday Night Football. But yeah, crazy that Derrick Henry didn't go over his rushing yards, considering every time I looked, it was keep going up. All right, so for this game,
Matt, you took his carries. You didn't take his passing attempts, did you? You didn't take his passing touchdowns?
I did not. That was pretty crazy. 2 for 2. He's better than Russell Wilson out there.
It's funny. You call it the obvious play, right? And then all of a sudden, everyone's expecting him to run it in. It was a pretty nice play.
It was a great play call, and I expect them to continue to do it. I mean, what are you going to do? He runs into the line. I mean, you're all going to collapse in. It was pretty crazy. But, yeah, I can't believe he didn't go over his rushing yards. I mean, I don't know what his longest rush was, but it certainly wasn't very long. All right, Colts and Eagles. So, look, the Eagles were very disappointing. Their run defense is not very good, so you're going to naturally look at Jonathan Taylor. Because Jonathan Taylor is the type of guy that the Colts are going to run it time and time and time again. So, it could be the obvious one that falls short like Derrick Henry did last night. But, I mean, if I'm the Colts, I'm running it 30, 40 times with him, and I'm mixing in the other guys if they really want to. And then on the other side, look, the Eagles have only allowed four passes of over 33 yards this season. Matt Ryan's got a terrible arm. So I'll play it once again, and he'll probably lose on a fluke pass, much like the one 2 weeks ago. The NFL still hasn't changed. And the one last week where Darius Slade decided not to cover Terry McLaurin. But, I mean, it's a trend, and I'm going to keep playing it. With regards to the other side, I think the Eagles are going to run it a little bit more than they did last week. Miles Sanders had 1 carry in the first half. That was kind of disgusting. Of course, they only had the ball for 6 minutes. The Dallas Goedert injury, I think, is going to open up some things for some other guys. I think Devonta Smith's going to get a little bit more. There's no real tight end who's going to replace Dallas Goedert, so I'm not going to exactly just go like, oh, here's Grant Calcaterra's props or Jack Stoll's props. I don't think that they're just going to step in and replace Dallas Goedert. I think, Jalen Hurts over 1.5 passing touchdowns. That's going to certainly intrigue me when it eventually comes out. It's not out right now. But I expect this one to see a lot of points here, and I think the Colts can make this thing interesting, especially if they use Jonathan Taylor for 30 to 40 carries potentially.
I would like to add, keep an eye on the injury status of A.J. Brown. Matt, I saw on Wednesday, he said that he felt like he was good to go on Sunday. I don't know if you've heard anything about A.J. Brown as of now. We're recording this Friday morning. He looks good to go, right?
As far as I could tell, yeah, him and Devonta Smith were both limited this week. I didn't realize that A.J. Brown was playing last week. I thought that he took Monday off, but apparently he actually did play in that game. So he just, he hurt his ankle, and it kind of limited him. And then Devonta Smith got hurt. And, once again, also, we didn't have the ball very much on Monday night. So, yeah, I expect them both to be healthy. That's why I kind of like the Hurts over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Your secondary is not exactly great, Andy. I expect a lot of points in this game. I don't know what you think.
Well, I said last week that the Colts cannot handle these big, gifted, elite wide receivers, and Devontae Adams tore us to shreds. I expect A.J. Brown to do the same thing. I think you're dead on Jalen Hurts over passing touchdowns. We're allowing 3 yards a carry the last 3 games, and they're going to attack us through the air. Every team should. We got Gilmore as supposedly our number one, lockdown corner, except he can't lock anybody down anymore. So I think that you're spot on with that. It's going to be a passing game for Philly, I expect. So I would expect a lot of Jonathan Taylor, but don't be surprised if Matt Ryan gets quite a few yards. They seem to like to dump off passes to Paris Campbell. We'll see what Pittman does. And we were talking just before we recorded about, we think Slade's going to be on Pittman, right, Matt? So are we looking at Pittman maybe under a little bit, or do you think Slade can lock down Pittman?
I mean, here's the thing. Even if he doesn't, Bradbury's no slouch on the other end. So, yeah, I mean, I'd look at the Pittman under potentially anyway. I like, I'm a guy who liked Alec Pierce. I think Alec Pierce could be worth a look. With Sam Ellinger, he never looked Alec Pierce's way. Matt Ryan loves Alec Pierce too, so I think there could be some value there potentially.
Nice. Andrew, coming to you, we're going to talk the Patriots and the Jets. Boy, not fun times for Packer Nation. Thoughts on last night's game, and then let's get into the Patriots and Jets.
Yeah, can we just skip to the Patriots Jets? Or yeah, I mean,
Sure,
look, so it's funny, real quick. So I was on Sports Grid Radio on this past Tuesday night, Andy, and they're asking my predictions, props, sides, totals, what I'm looking at. And the fact of the matter is, I'm telling him, I'm like, look, I can't lie. I'm a fan of this team, and that's probably one of the reasons why I don't bet on them that often. I did have a bet on them against the Cowboys, but look, there's nothing I can really tell you that why they deserve to be this type of favorites right now. And then Matt, and you talk about the obvious prop play on Derrick Henry and how we expect Green Bay to deal with it. The answer, they didn't. They couldn't. And, honestly, I'm getting sick and tired of hearing the whole Rodgers doesn't have any help argument. I'm tired of it. I mean, it's almost a bailout for this guy. I'm someone that always defends my team. No matter what sport it is, Andy, I'll be the guy that if you could say anything bad about a player on my favorite team, and I'll try and defend them. I'm tired of everybody defending Rodgers. If he has a bad game, if he's not throwing the ball away, if he's not finding the open guys, then that's something that we have to discuss. And Matt LaFleur, I think he's just been along for the ride with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I don't even think LaFleur is a great coach, but he's just, been with a great team. Rodgers just kind of carried him along the way. Anyway, nobody wants to hear me rant about the Packers. It was definitely not a good game for them last night, but hats off to Tennessee. They just elevated themselves that much more in their very competitive division. I mean, they needed that win big time to secure a good spot in their division. In all seriousness, nobody's catching them.
It's really, really tough to pull ahead of those teams. Yeah, really tough to stretch the lead against the Texans and the Jags and the Colts.
We were talking last night. I was with some friends, and they were saying any team would be lucky to play them in the playoffs. If you're playing a higher seed, that's the team that you want to play is the Titans. That's the false top dog. Anyway, I'm in Boston right now. I'm going to the game on Sunday, Patriots versus Jets. So it's nice to get some action at a game that you're at, but it's also more fun to look into that one a little bit deeper. I'll start off with a play let me just recap a little bit of what we saw the last time these two teams played, because it was just a few weeks ago. Patriots won that one 22-17, 3-point favorite. Zach Wilson, 355 yards. Yes, 355 yards, 2 touchdowns, but he tossed 3 interceptions. Why do I bring that up? Why do I slow down when I say that? Well, I'm going to kind of surprise you guys a little bit. I'm going to go under 0.5 interceptions for Zach Wilson this weekend at plus 155. I think that Zach Wilson is going to be babied. I think they're going to run the ball a lot with Michael Carter. I think you look at his numbers. Michael Carter's obviously there's been injuries at the running back position, and that's why he hasn't really gone over this number of 42.5. He did last week against Buffalo, and I think he will this time around as well. I don't think he'll be throwing deep. I don't think they're going to ask Zach Wilson to throw that many dangerous passes. And one thing about this Patriots team, they rank very high, in pressuring the quarterback. And, well, the Jets rank very low in dealing with that pressure, which is why Zach Wilson has had a record of throwing it. But you know what? Minus 200 for the yes here for Zach Wilson to throw one, and plus 155. Give me the contrarian play here, guys. I think Wilson protects the ball this week. I think they're going to realize that, hey, we were in that game besides some of those costly plays that Wilson committed. I think their game plan will adjust, and it'll make things a little bit easier for Zach Wilson. So a plus 155. Forget the minus 200 on an interception prop. I'll take the plus 155. I notice, guys, pretty much a lot of the time when I talk about the Patriots, whether it's on this show or anything else that I do, there's one guy that I bring up quite often. But if they're winning for me, why does it matter? Let me go with Jacoby Myers over on his receiving yards, not receptions, receiving yards. This guy has a lot better of a track record with the yards versus receptions, something we've talked about here on Prop It Up. Certain guys are better for certain scenarios here. 5 of his last 7 games, we have seen Myers go over this number. He did go over it against the New York Jets a few weeks ago with 60 yards. And again, his number is 48.5. Fell short last week, but The buzz around town and every article I read about this Patriots team, they need to establish some separation. They need to establish some type of, not like an ultra deep ball, but they need to establish something to get that run game opened up, which I do expect will be good. But I just don't think it's going to be as dominantly of a run game for the Patriots as the general public seem to think right now. And all the writers talking about this game being a boring football game, I don't really think it will be. So I'm looking at Jacoby Myers to have a big one. And Mac Jones, I wanted to talk about him for a second because it's such a love-hate in the city of Boston right now with him. I've already been in a few Uber drivers. They've all been sports fans. And I love asking people about their local team. One guy said he hated Mac Jones. One guy said people aren't giving him a chance. It's hilarious, right? To see what just people like to say about this guy. And so the question I ask people is, when he starts making mistakes, do you remove him from the game, or is he a guy that you have to build with and grow with? And it depends on who you ask. But the Patriots rank 23rd in the league in passing offense, 20th in yards per play. But Mac Jones, get this, has gone over his completions in 5 of his last 6 games. So they don't do well throwing, as far as their yards go. Consistently, they're ranking very, very low as far as yards per game. But this guy is throwing the ball still. Completions, attempts are cashing in for Mac Jones. In summary, guys, look, I don't think this game is going to be as boring and run heavy as many might think. But I think that it's going to be a very cautious and careful game for both teams. I'm looking at Myers. I'm looking at Mac Jones over completions. And yes, I'm going to be at the game with a bunch of fans cheering on New England and cheering for Zach Wilson not to throw an interception, which will be kind of funny. But those are my plays for this game, guys.
What a dynamic. You're around all the Boston fans, and when Zach Wilson throws an incompletion or a completion, you're like, yes. Then let people around you try and guess what the angle is. So, well, have fun, Andrew. It should be a good time.
Thank you.
Make sure you get some pictures. I'm sure you will. I'm going to talk real quick about the Bengals and the Steelers. 2 big storylines here. You got the return of TJ Watt and the return of DJ Reader, and those are huge additions to the defenses of these teams. When DJ Reader is on the field, the Bengals give up 2.8 yards a carry. When he's off the field, they give up 4.3 yards a carry. And we saw TJ Watt come back and just completely changes that Steelers defense. These 2 teams played in week 1. It was an insane game. Burrow threw a bunch of interceptions. We had Evan McPherson missing field goals and extra points. It was a bizarre game, so I don't know if there's a whole lot we can take away from that one. But I do have a couple of props that I think is good. Well, first off, guys, to me, this is a classic first quarter under. With the additions of TJ Watt and DJ Reader, I think this could be a pretty low-scoring game to start off with. I think these teams will try and feel each other out. You don't have Jamar Chase there, so I look for low scoring to start off with, so give me the first quarter under on that. And then I'm looking at a couple of receiving props, actually. I like Deontay Johnson over 50.5 yards receiving. I'm not sure how good this Bengals secondary is going to be moving forward without Awuzie. And he got over last week, so I think maybe we're seeing Deontay Johnson start to improve just a little bit with Kenny Pickett. So I'll take him over 50.5. Najee Harris, he's got a very low receiving total. It's only 12.5. Last week, he had no receptions, and I think that was just because they didn't need for him to catch passes. They were ahead. They were up big on the Saints, didn't need to pass the ball. But you look the previous 2 weeks where the games were close and they lost, he had 26 yards receiving and 15 yards receiving. He had 6 catches and 3 catches in those. So I think it's a low total on Najee Harris. I think they'll need him in the passing game. And then I'm also going to go with Joe Mixon over 26.5 yards receiving. He's become a big part of the passing game. He's gone over several games, and I think they're going to use him on some of those dump off and screen passes to kind of neutralize the pressure that TJ Watt will put on him. So I'm not going to take any overs on rushing because of DJ Reader and TJ Watt, but give me Deontay Johnson, give me Joe Mixon, give me Najee Harris over their receiving totals in that game. Matt, coming back to you, talking the Commanders and the Texans. We have an all-time horrific rush defense involved in this game. I'm assuming you're going to be talking about these Washington running backs. What do you got for the Commanders and the Texans?
By the way, I'll just add to your Steelers stuff. I like the Jalen Warren receiving over. Jalen Warren, I mean, remember last week, Mike Tomlin said he wanted to get more touches for Jalen Warren, and he went over his receiving thing because it's one of the ones I hit last week. It was like 12.5, and he had like 30 last week receiving-wise. So I'll be interested, especially the longer it stays close. Jalen Warren, I think, will get some interest there. So that's somebody I'll be looking at when that comes out. Texans and
Line's only 13.5 on that one too, Matt. So they didn't raise the line a whole lot. So you're getting a pretty reasonable number on that play as well.
Yeah, I like it. And Mike Tomlin's a guy I think I can believe. If he says that somebody's going to get more touches, I think that he's going to get more touches. He's not like some of these other, new age coaches who are like, let me just screw with the media and say this guy's going to get more touches and then lie. I think Mike Tomlin will do it. So I think Jalen Warren has some value. All right. Look, first of all, I think the Texans are going to win this game. I just think that the Commanders won their Super Bowl last week. Like, watch them celebrate. Like, watch the stuff they did in the plane. Short week, travel, sleepy place. I think Dameon Pierce could have a decent game here. I know the Commanders have a very stout front seven. Of course, the Eagles never really tested it, so we don't know if it's still stout. But I think Dameon Pierce is a guy that could do some things. I think you might see him a little bit more in the passing game because the run game may struggle a little bit. And then on the Commanders side, look, it could be the Derrick Henry setup prop of the game, but like Brian Robinson's rushing over. I was a little concerned about Brian Robinson's rushing over last week because Antonio Gibson had started getting a little bit more work. And if the game had gone the way I thought it was going to go, that Washington was going to chase points. But in retrospect, the 35 or whatever they said it last week was an absolute joke. And Gibson's was even like 30. And that one he went over by a lot. So they got smart. They raised it a little bit. I mean, you pretty much have to probably take the Robinson rushing yards over. As you said, the Texans rush defense is historically bad. It's right up there probably with the Lions in terms of how bad they are. Terry McLaurin's number, once again, like receptions and receiving yards over. The one difference that I've seen in the Commanders' offense, Carson Wentz never threw the ball to Terry McLaurin. Taylor Heineke lets Terry McLaurin make plays. He remembers that we have a number one wide receiver for a reason. So as long as the Bucs keep putting these low numbers, who's the number one corner on Houston? I mean, is it Derek Stingley? I don't know. They actually play a lot of zone there, I feel like, in Houston too. So give me the McLaurin numbers. Give me the Robinson numbers. This one seems in theory to be relatively easy if Washington plays it right. Of course, if they're not focused, then who the heck knows? But McLaurin, Robinson, and Pierce, the big three stars in this game, are the ones who should get the most attention.
Matt Joseph from sportsmemo.com talk about the Commanders and the Texans. Angie, you picked an interesting one. The Cardinals and the 49ers. We've got Kyler Murray and Colt McCoy both dealing with a little bit of injuries. Yeah. Meanwhile, the 49ers just keep they seem like they're building a juggernaut. What do you like props-wise for the Cardinals and 49ers this week?
Well, Andy, this might be the first time I've looked at a game where there aren't that many numbers out there, and there isn't really that much to look at. But I think it's interesting because the Cardinals have been a team that I've pretty much hated on all year. I've been very low on, but you can still find props on these games where you don't really like this team, or you don't think they're going to cover the spread or whatever. You can still find ways to make money. Look, the way I'm looking at it is this. No matter who's the quarterback out there on Sunday, I'm not going to give you a name. I think they're going to go under on their passing touchdowns. How about that, Andy? This is a Cardinals team that I think is going to be just very run heavy. They're relying on James Conner. They're relying on anybody but their quarterbacks, it seems like, to throw the ball when they need it. And even when Kyler Murray was there and was healthy for them, he was running the ball himself. Their red zone conversion is absolutely horrible. And they don't want to put the ball through the air once they get into that dangerous position in the red zone. So I'm looking at unders there. As far as this Cardinals team as a whole, they're just being carried by a couple different guys. You look down the list. I mean, Andy, I hope you don't have AJ Green on your fantasy team.
I do not.
I mean, you look along the list for this team, it's rough. Like, their offense ranks super low. The Cardinals defense, bottom 5 as well. Giving up 25.8 points per game, third in the NFL. And you take a look at San Fran, what they're doing, the way they're just slicing through teams. And the interesting thing about the Niners is that they don't really have to. They don't when they win games, they don't really blow teams out. They have a solid defense as well, which I think is going to make things very difficult for the Cardinals. So I think I'll be planning on being on some receptions under for this Cardinals team, because when you take a look at them, we always talk about yards versus receptions. And in this game in particular, I could see myself taking a receiving yards under for a player for the Cardinals and getting burnt off 1 or 2 plays, which is just not something I'm committed to doing. I'm going to look a lot more with receptions under. Lately, I'm more of a receptions under guy and receiving yards over. That's kind of my plan for the Cardinals. And for this Niners team, am I wrong to just keep riding the hot hand with a guy that does it all for them, and the guy that they picked up in Christian McCaffrey, rushing and receiving? I talked about this with you guys last week, and when I was on, I asked you, are you guys still doing these kind of props? Are you guys still doing these combo bets? This is a guy you want to be doing it with. He can sometimes go off receiving. He can sometimes have a huge rushing game. So I'll be taking a look at the obvious pick, as Matt called it there, with Derrick Henry, and take Christian McCaffrey over on his rushing and receiving. This Cardinals team will not be able to stop him, and I'll be keeping it short and simple with that. As far as Jimmy G, actually, I did want to mention, because I've been getting into these passing touchdown numbers. As much as I love the completions and attempts, it's so cool to watch that some teams that fare really well, that have like decent records or off like pretty good wins, they're not throwing touchdowns in the end zone. I mean, they're just running it inconsistently. Jimmy G, also a guy I'll look towards under on his passing touchdowns. But, with this Arizona team, the expectations have gotten a lot lower on them, and it could be kind of a buy point for them as far as against the spread this week. But as far as their guys, I don't really see many people that are going to, besides the top 2 players in the depth chart for receiving, getting that many catches. So I'll be looking at quite a few unders for them. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me ask 2 things real quick. So, one, this game's in Mexico. We saw, 4 years ago, they didn't play the game because of field issues. So I don't know if that's going to be any sort of factor. And then also, I had the McCaffrey over last week, and Elijah Mitchell's there, and he's been a pest in terms of the biting into that McCaffrey stuff. Are you worried about Elijah Mitchell at all? And is there actually any value on him maybe? Because I'm betting his number is going to be a little bit lower, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. Elijah Mitchell is another reason why I wouldn't look at any passing touchdowns for Jimmy G. That's for sure, because he's a threat to punch it in as well. But to answer your question, that's why I would look at the rushing and receiving if I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey. That way I can keep both doors open. And what's great about that prop is that you don't really need it to be equally balanced. You could have him cover this completely with receiving. You could have it go half and half, but it's a really good point. It goes to show how well balanced they are, and that's really why I would look at both rushing and receiving. As far as the location and as far as the game goes, as of right now, to be honest with you, Matt, I have just kind of handicapped the game. I'm going to hopefully just trust these teams to do what they do. And honestly, for the Cardinals, I'm more so just going to be fading them. And as far as their props are concerned, and the Niners, I'm looking for guys to bet on. So it's going to be a lot of unders for me with that Cardinals team. And what do you guys think of what I said there? For most of the time lately, when I'm taking unders on receivers, it's been receptions. When I'm taking overs, it's been yards. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends on the receiver that, if they break a long one, which we've seen at the beginning of the year that teams have been taking away the longer passes, but I feel like we're starting to see it open up just a little bit more. I think it's kind of a case by case and receiver by receiver. You've got some of these receivers that are, volume receivers, and you got some that are just, big play shots. So I think it just depends on what receiver you've got based on the defense that they're playing. Matt, I'm trying to think of some guys off the top of my head, but that are good at receptions, but maybe not so much at yards, or vice versa. I'm trying to think. I feel like guys like Justin Jefferson are good in both categories.
Yeah,
some of those
but it's more so if I'm
guys.
fading somebody, right? If I'm expecting someone not to play well, I would just hate to take them under 4.5 receptions, or they look at their receptions, and I can take under 4.5 receptions. They could have 3, but go for 70 yards, and I'll still cash my ticket, right? That's what I'd hate to see if I want to fade someone. I take the under on their yards. they have like 2 catches, but for 50 yards, it would just be more painful to watch, I guess, in that aspect.
Yeah, totally get
I would
it.
say
So,
DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe he's a guy who's a little short yardage type. I mean, Treylon Burks was a short yardage guy before last night. Woods was a short yardage guy before last night. So, yeah, there are some guys. It's kind of, I guess you base it off of yards per catch and how many receptions they have. There's some guys who I do like receptions more. There's some guys I like yardage more. I like the yardage more, I feel like, for the running backs because I feel like the books – somebody will set a 3.5 when a guy is usually at around 3 receptions or, a 2.5 when they're around 2. So I feel like the running backs, I play more yards than receptions.
good stuff from Andrew at WagerTalk.com. I am going to break down the Raiders and the Broncos. To me, this one's pretty simple. I'm going to be taking the under on Davante Adams. He was coming off the huge game against the Colts, and then he's got the worst possible matchup this week. The Broncos are just incredible against wide receivers. They've allowed 1,013 yards this entire season to wide receivers. And without Darren Waller, without Renfro, they should be able to key in on Davante Adams, double team, triple team. He may get a lot of targets, but I'm not sure he gets there in yards. He's going to be seeing all of the attention. So I think this is a really good spot to come back with Davante having a huge game last week, but come back and take the under. The rushing yards is really interesting to me, and I think you might be able to do something pretty quirky with this one. So the Raiders, obviously, morale is very low on that team. It's pretty hard to see them coming out and playing inspired football this weekend. So the Raiders gave up 100 yards to Taylor last week. They gave up 100 yards to Etienne the week before that. And then the week before that, they gave up well over 100 yards to the combination of some Saints running backs. So I'm looking here at the running back totals for the Broncos. Latavius Murray is at 39.5. Melvin Gordon is at 37.5. I think you can play both of them over. I think this is a game where they're going to use both guys in the rushing game. It wouldn't surprise me if they got a little bit ahead. I think the Denver defense is going to be – I think they're going to be perfectly fine with shutting down the Raiders. I don't think this is going to be a huge score fest, but I think Denver can have a lot of success running the ball. And I get 2 guys with their totals under 40 yards when the Raiders are giving up well over 100 each game. These 2 are going to get all of the carries. I think you can play both of them. If one of them doesn't break that really, really long, like 60-yard run, I think both of them go over. It wouldn't surprise me if both of them had 45 to 60 yards. So for rushing, I think you can take both of those Denver running backs. And then I do have to read these numbers here to you guys. So listen to these numbers. 67, 35, 34, 55, 51, 47, 47, and 66. Those are Russell Wilson's longest completions every game this season. He is hitting this prop every single week. So as much as we've been banging on Russell Wilson and how bad he's been crushing this over longest completion. So it's kind of one of those where I think I may just play it until it stops hitting. So Russell Wilson over his longest completion.
I love that.
The number isn't out yet, but as soon as it does, we gotta play it. I couldn't believe it.
Everybody in the world will be hating on him that day and making memes about him, but you will be cheering him on, Andy. I like that one quite a bit.
As Cortland Sutton is waltzing down the sidelines for a 50-yard pass. Yeah, those numbers are just incredible. And that's with him completing like 21, 18, 15, 21, 17 completions. It's not like he's like completing 30 completions.
Are those coming in the second half, I wonder? I'm curious when those are coming in the game.
That I don't have in front of me. I'm sure I could look it up, but yeah, I thought those numbers were just pretty shocking. So we're looking at the Denver running backs over, Russell Wilson longest completion over, and Davante Adams under. So, all right, guys, let's go through a couple of topics before we get to the best bet. I want to shout out to everybody in the chat. Thanks for joining us every Friday morning. Really, really appreciate you guys. Matt, talk to us here for a couple minutes. Just last couple weeks of college football.
So to me, it's breaking down the college football card the last couple weeks of the seasons is somewhat easy in terms of there's a bunch of different categories here. You've got the teams trying to make the playoffs and trying to impress the committee. Ohio State fits in that category. Tennessee fits in that category. Michigan this week would fit in that category. Georgia probably doesn't have to necessarily impress the committee. They just have to keep winning. So you have these teams that are going to have to put on shows. And I think you look at their team total points overs because they've got lesser opponents. And so you just want to look at that. Then you've got the group of people who are going for the Heisman, which once again, has a lot of Hendon Hooker, CJ Stroud, Drake May for North Carolina. You basically take the top 4 or 5 in the odds and just assume that they're going to all have really good games against their lesser opponents this week. So that's something else you're going to kind of look for. There's also the teams that are trying to get bowl eligible, whether they're 1 win away or 2 wins away. And depending upon the team, I think most squads are going to be excited to go for bowl eligibility. So you're going to look at some motivation matchups where some teams are motivated against some teams ready to go home. You obviously want to lean towards the motivated. There are the games, like both games, well, not both games today, one of the games today, where neither team is motivated. They both suck. They have no bowl eligibility. You kind of pass over those rather easily because you just don't want to try and guess where these kids' heads at. Like Tulsa, South Florida tonight. I don't know. South Florida fired their coach. They didn't cover the next game like everybody else did, so I don't know where their head's at. Tulsa sucks too, so you just kind of skip over that game rather easily. And then there's also the bunch of the bad teams that have rivalry games next week that may not care as much this week. The next week is rivalry week across the country. There's going to be a lot of games between teams that don't like each other. They may not put their focus in this week, so you're going to kind of look at those games a little bit differently. So you kind of look at these last 2 weeks and you assume the teams that have to win are going to keep winning. The teams that want to win are going to keep winning. The teams that don't want to win and are ready to go home, they're going to keep losing. So take the games where nobody's playing for bowl eligibility and instantly throw them out of your card and just kind of focus on everything else. Last thing, shame on the Mac. The Buffalo-Akron game was going to be so much fun in 19 feet of snow, and they postponed it to potentially the next day. Shame on the Mac. Embrace your brand and play in a bunch of snow.
Andrew, give me a minute on NHL assist props.
Well, before I do, guys, we have some breaking news actually right now on this show that I just found out that's going to make my Packers loss even that much worse. I just saw a report that the Titans offensive coordinator was arrested for a DUI after the game last night. So he was drunk calling plays and still was able to beat the Green Bay Packers. So that's just another slap in the face to my Packers, that the fact that the OC was having a few cold ones on the bench and they were able to win. Look, I think I've talked about this before in the NHL with you guys, but I'm always trying to refresh the topics that I've taken a look at. Today, I just wanted to discuss the assist prop because I find that there's just so many ways that you can take a look at NFL, NBA, NHL, and the assist prop is one that's caught my eye quite a bit. And a friend of mine has definitely put me on those as well. And what's so cool about it is, of course, there's the primary assist and the secondary assist. You don't even have to be the last guy that touched the puck before the guy that scored. You can be the second last guy and still get credited with an assist. And the odds on this, because we always talk about juice tolerance, right? All three of us have decided that we have our own ranges, of course, with what we're comfortable with for each prop and how much we want to lay as far as a minus 150, 200, whatever it might be. But the best part is if you want a guy to get a point, a really talented player to get a point, you have to pay a premium, a really, really, really expensive price. How about you just narrow it down to the guy getting an assist? All of a sudden, you're getting a minus 110, 120, 130 maybe for a guy on the ice all kinds of times, on the power play, and looking at all these people, especially even defensemen, that distribute the puck around to these goal scorers, and they can cash you a ticket. Looking at goal scorers, though, guys that are shoot first, the playmakers versus shoot first guys. There's only one game today in the NHL, so I thought it was kind of cool to hopefully I can give some actionable info for today. A guy like JT Miller. I'm not sure if you ever bet his shots on goal props, Andy, but he's someone that all he really does is shoot. You're not going to see him pass the puck too much. I'm not saying he's a puck hog, but this guy doesn't, when he's in the slot, he's not looking for somebody else. He's a, shoot first guy. So why am I saying that? Well, his assist number you can get for him today is minus 110 on the under. I don't expect that guy to pass the puck. He has hit in the last 10 games. He's only hit this 2 times. He's only got an assist twice. You look up and down the roster for guys like Quinn Hughes and Brock Besser. Brock Besser has cashed his assist prop in 9 of his last 11 games. And guess what the price is for it tonight? Plus 135 for him to get an assist.
Wow.
You want him to get a point, guys. You're paying a really, really, really expensive number there. So especially teams that get on the power play quite a bit. I know it might sound kind of funny to handicap how many power plays a team might get, but it's very similar to the NBA, right? Think about certain teams that just draw more fouls, certain players that attack the hoop hard. It's similar in hockey. Certain teams draw more penalties. You go to the power play, and that's where the assist props can be lethal, because imagine you take a point prop on a guy or a goal scoring prop, and the guy ends up with 2 or 3 assists. But to take the point prop, you had to pay a minus 200. All of a sudden, you're getting a great, great price there with these. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes, guys, I'll even parlay these. I'll take this defenseman that's like minus 200 to get an assist with this defenseman on a really good team, and you turn that into a really good number too. But I really want to encourage people to take a look at those props, because I know people are starting to get into the NHL player point market, but especially here with the assists, you can definitely make some money.
Nice. I'll go over just a couple of things here in UFC. We're just seeing more and more. If these fights in UFC, if they smell like they're going to be violent, just take the fight to not go the distance. We saw a slew of them last week get finished, and you could have parlayed a bunch of them and ended up with plus money. UFC is going more towards judging, and Andrew, you know this. They're rewarding guys that do damage. They're rewarding the strikers more than they are the grapplers, especially in the judges' decisions. So take a look at some of these fights that just have 2 fighters that always finish, and maybe look at parlaying them together. The main event, Derek Lewis versus Sergey Spivak. No shot this one goes the distance. I mean, Andrew, there's no way this one's going under. So you take that one. Now it's minus 750. So you want to try and find another one. The Kennedy in Chegwu and Ian Kudalaba. Kudalaba he hasn't gone the distance the last couple. His fights get finished pretty early. So just if you follow UFC, don't ignore these fights to not go the distance. If you've got 2 bangers, you got guys with glass chins that get knocked out easily, just parlay a couple of them. You'll get some really, really good prices, as we saw last week.
I'm curious, Andy, as far as your tolerance with prices in that market, because, and this is just a personal question, like a personal preference thing, because like you mentioned, you can take this fighter to win inside the distance to give you better odds, right? Or this guy to win via KO, or everybody gets really fancy in the UFC. And sometimes I find that the people that get fancy in particular, round 1 KO, round 2 submission by this type of sub, right? Versus just saying it will not go the distance, but you have to pay a higher price. The UFC, well managing the bankroll properly, I think is a type of market where I'm a little more comfortable stepping out of that zone of kind of for NHL and NBA. I think that I'm fine with laying the prices. What would you say your range is as far as these not to go the distance? I know you mentioned parlaying, of course, and you can find 2, but what's your range for that?
Well, UFC is making you pay a price this year, and I'm okay with it, especially on some of these fights that aren't going the distance. And yeah, I will pay the extra juice. If I have a guy that I think will finish the fight inside the distance, I'll pay an extra 25 cents to just take the overall fight to not go the distance on the off chance that the guy I think is going to win maybe gets flash knocked out or submitted. I'm perfectly fine with that. I like to keep it a little bit simple. I don't like to get too specific on like round 1 submissions or everything. It's fun when you hit a long shot, but long term, I would just rather I'd rather pay the extra price and take an easier cash. So I'm more and more open to laying juice in UFC because the books are kind of making you. But if you got a solid bet and you think you handicap it to where you think the price may be a little bit steep, but you think there's value on it, go ahead and fire away. I mean, if you're worried about laying juice, you're going to end up where you don't play a bunch of winners. That's happened to me more than once looking UFC. So I think you got to be a little bit more open on the juice tolerance in UFC. So, all right, guys, we're going to get to our best bet prop of the week. Andrew has a pick up at WagerTalk.com for the CFL Grey Cup. Go grab that. I've got a 5% NFL play. We're on a 10-3 run, and we've also got women's college basketball, 11-2 to start the season. And Matt Josephs from sportsmemo.com has a 5% college football play, number one in profits over at Sports Memo for college football. And Matt, you are doing the prop of the week. What do you got for us?
All right, so I love playing these first half props when it comes to this sort of thing, and I like over 13.5 points for the Ravens in the first half of this one. The Ravens average 13.6 points per first half overall, but almost 18 at home. They're coming off a bye week. 2 of the last 3 years, they've scored 17 points in the first half of their games. Coming off a bye week 2 of the last 3 years. The Panthers defense, not as good away from home, allowing over 15 points per game in the first half. So I think, and Baltimore's injury report is about as small as possible. It looks like Mark Andrews is going to play. Even if Andrews doesn't play, likely he's going to play, and he's becoming a good tight end. So I'm going to take a shot that the Ravens start very fast against the Carolina Panthers. Heck, Baker Mayfield's going to give us a short field at least once because he's going to throw a pick or he's going to fumble. So give me over 13.5 points for the Ravens in the first half of this one.
Oh, poor Baker. Somehow we have to bring in Baker failing in our breakdown. You're not wrong, though, Matt. You're not wrong.
Matt's the best at just slipping in a diss.
Just a jab at Baker Mayfield. So great. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. Hope everyone has a great, profitable weekend. Go check out Andrew and his CFL and NHL at WagerTalk.com. Go get Matt Joseph's college football at sportsmemo.com. I've got NFL up at WagerTalk.com. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Don't forget to hit the like button and the bell in the upper right-hand corner, even though all of you in the chat right now probably have already done that many times. So thanks for joining us. Let's have a profitable weekend, and we'll see everyone next week on Prop It Up.
How many handicapping groups can say they're around before Twitter, MySpace, AOL, Sunday morning cable infomercials, beepers, and 1-800 numbers? Founded in 1957, The Gold Sheet is the country's longest-running sports betting newsletter and has served bettors for over 6 decades. So between 1957 and now, if you have not checked out The Gold Sheet, here's your chance for only $1 per day. Head to goldsheet.com and just go to Buy Now or click the special box on the main page to get both the NBA Gold Sheet and College Basketball Gold Sheet newsletter for only $7. For just $1 per day, you will receive projected scores, spread and totals, power ratings and strength of schedule, teams straight up, against the spread, and over-under records and their season average line for both sides and total. Plus, tons more handicapper information to help you bet with confidence and, of course, tons of picks. This offer is for a limited time only, so act fast and head to goldsheet.com and try it out for 7 days for only $7. You'll be glad you did.